in light of Women's History Month, I have a question for both of you because I want to see how much you support women.
Okay.
I just want one quick answer. Coy, no explanations.
Right.
Just the answer. Who would win in a fight between John Wick and Harley Quinn? Just the name.
Harley.
Harley?
Harley.
All right. I had to check.
All right.
Welcome to DC Studio Showcase. I'm nerd commentator Frankey Smith.
I'm entertainment journalist Tyler Coates.
And every episode, we are joined by our comic correspondent, Coy Jandro.
Who was very nervous after that. I didn't know how that was going to go, but it worked out.
We had to start with the heat. We have a jam-packed episode. We're going to talk about women in DC. And we have showrunner, creator, executive producer of one of my favorite shows, HBO's The Penguin. We have Lauren LeFranc.
One of my favorite shows of last year. For
Really?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Tyler, I think slowly you cannot say you're not. Like you're not curious anymore.
Even if it wasn't, even if I didn't have this job, I would say that. They're not paying me to have the right opinions.
Yeah, I think the thing about the Penguin, and we'll definitely talk about it later, is that it's so accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
Like I have like my brother-in-law from Harlem who's like super hood, and he loves the Penguin. He's like, yeah, this is just like The Sopranos and stuff like that. So I'm excited.
I also love having Tyler because I keep thinking it's for everyone. And then to hear it actually is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into it. We're gonna press her. We're gonna talk.
Yeah.
But let's start off after you guys passed that test with flying colors.
I feel like it was kind of an easy test.
To you, but that's the point. If it wasn't, right? Because I think a lot of people would argue that John Wick could beat Harley Quinn.
We haven't seen the comments yet. We haven't read the YouTube comments yet in the future.
They were like, they just did it because Frankey was there. And even if you did, that was the right answer.
I also appreciate you know me well enough to go, don't explain it. Just let it go. Just please.
But since we're talking about women and since we're talking about Harley Quinn, let's start with the women of DC. Now, Tyler, we'll still give you the DC curious.
Please, yeah. I mean, I don't know everybody.
You don't know everyone. What prominent female DC characters do you know?
Oh, I mean, well, obviously Wonder Woman, one of the main superheroes, but Catwoman has always been one of my favorite characters. We talked about this with Batman Returns. Like, I love Catwoman in that movie.
Do you love Catwoman or do you love Michelle Pfeiffer?
Probably I love Michelle Pfeiffer. But even when I was a kid, like I loved the Batman, like the 60s Batman. So like whenever Catwoman would show up, I'd get very excited. So
what do you know about Supergirl?
Supergirl, I have to confess, I did read Woman of Tomorrow.
This makes me so happy.
I did read Woman of Tomorrow by my own volition. No one asked me to.
No one. I have it on good authority that Coy has been threatening you every day.
Every day. Because I wanted, basically the pitch to me was it's true grit in space. And I was like, that sounds amazing.
And what did you think it was?
I liked it. It really surprised me. It really surprised me how, I'm excited for the movie because I think that there's so much they can add. I think that was what really surprised me about the book overall is that there's so much that it didn't show and tell you. Like, it's, someone's memory. So it's very subjective. And I thought it was really great. And it was beautiful. It's a beautiful
It's stunning.
Book,
And it's one of the reasons why I advocate for animation so hard. Now, this is live action, but I feel like Millie Alcock, is that how you're saying it?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that they're going to hit it out of the park. And I'm so glad is that your first Supergirl story?
Oh, yeah. For sure. Well, except for the 80s movie, which I don't remember what it was about other than it was Supergirl and Faye Dunaway was the bad guy.
So that writer I talked about a lot in our first block of filming, Tom King wrote that. And then Bilquis Evely is the artist. And to me, that cosmic energy, I can't wait to see what that translates to. Was there any other influences you felt as someone outside of comics? Obviously True Grit, but did you feel any other movie or TV show influence?
Not really that I could pinpoint, but I just, again, I thought was really interesting, it leaves a lot to your imagination, I think, as a reader. Something that I really blew my mind, the way, I can't remember the younger character her name.
The character's name is Ruth Ye. The
Ruth
actress
Ye, of
playing her
course.
is Eve. My brain went Eve because the casting that just happened.
Yes.
But Ruth Ye is the little girl.
You know what? I'm
You
glad
had a Frankey
pronounced-
moment.
I did. I was like, human or character?
I thought it was Ruthie, so I'm glad we got the right pronunciation too.
Because they
so
would
glad
have
you
yelled at us in the YouTube comments.
Exactly,
They'd be like,
yeah.
I cannot believe you don't remember. I'm terrible with names.
No,
so.
there's a moment where she talks about like Supergirl, how like she's actually withholding her power every day of her life, and like that is such a burden. I don't know. There's something about that I thought was really beautiful, and like really, it's such an interesting like character piece.
Love that you feel that way, Tyler, because that's the thesis of the Kal-El's period, right? It's the fact that they're always kind of making themselves smaller. And just as a woman, as a Black woman, reading Superman and reading Supergirl, that's what resonates with me.
Right, yeah,
is the
totally.
fact that they're almost perpetually code switching.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so glad that stuck out, because that's one thing people don't get about Superman, about Supergirl, is that they always have to make themselves smaller.
Yeah, and the burden that comes, like the emotional burden that comes with that is, I think, really interesting.
And also the casting, now that you've read it, like Matthias Schoenaerts, I think is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited.
Interesting.
David Krumholtz, who's one of us, like is a super nerd. Like that's so exciting to have him in the DC
You're
universe.
missing one of the most important.
Lobo.
That's right.
Even I know who Lobo, because of course I read the Wikipedia page. I was like, when is Jason Momoa showing up? And shock, he didn't. So that was I was sort of surprised about.
And he was the original draft of the comic before editors decided they wanted to go a different direction. Tom King had originally written Lobo into it. So it's really cool as a comic fan to see we might get a blend of the original story with the new story. And Momoa is like made to be Lobo.
Right.
Yes, he's been lobbying for it.
In like life though, like since birth, I feel like he's been lobbying by existing. Momoa is Lobo.
by eating protein. For those of you at home, Koi is actually on the Lobo diet. 50 pounds of beef jerky.
I got so
this
much
morning.
guff for starting the day at 7 a.m. with beef jerky. I thought it was a perfectly normal thing to do.
Insane. I can't. And I'm the one who got sick a couple of weeks ago, and he's eating meat in the morning. But let's move on from Supergirl, because there are a lot of women and there are a lot of representation in DC in media. Wonder Woman with the Patty Jenkins movie. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. I saw both of those.
I think incredible work, right? And she has some really great comic book runs that, I mean, I'm sure Koi will text you a bunch. The Birds of Prey. Do you remember the Birds of Prey series on... It was WB at the time.
Yeah, back in the day.
I didn't know.
It was campy. It was short. It was beautiful.
I liked the Margot Robbie movie a lot.
The Margot Robbie,
yes,
yeah. And that's what I think that people don't give it enough flowers.
I mean, it like came out at the worst possible time. It was like right at the start of the pandemic, so like it kind of died on the vine just because of that. But like, it's really funny. Ewan McGregor is great in it. Chris Messina is really good in it. Like Journey Smollett's so good in it.
Yeah.
Like it's a good cast.
It's gorgeous too. It's shot so beautifully. And the reason why I brought up John Wick, I believe the choreographer for the fight scenes also choreographed some of John Wick as well. And that's why the fight scenes are so dynamic and interesting and practical and intuitive. Like I feel like Harley Quinn is doing things, she's looking, she's scrappy, what's around, and she's having fun with, I don't think John Wick has fun, but she's having fun.
It's all business.
Yeah, I don't know if you could find Birds of Prey anywhere, but Birds of Prey follows Helena. She's Helena in it, right? Mm-hmm. In the Birds of Prey show. Well, it follows her, and she gets a whole thing with Oracle, who's Barbara Gordon, and I believe, who was the third member of the team on that show?
Oh, it's been 20 years.
It's been 20 years.
Oh, it is that long ago?
It's so early 2000, late 90s.
I had no idea. Okay.
I think they play Evanescence in it. It's all in. And it's honestly iconic. But you know, if you haven't seen it, you know, I won't take off points for Women's History Month. If you haven't seen enough Catwoman, though, I would.
Okay.
So I need to test you on how much Catwoman have you seen?
I mean, I have seen, obviously, Batman Returns.
Okay.
The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes,
the one
with Anne Hathaway.
I never saw the Halle Berry one. Is that
Never.
okay? Can I?
Okay. You know,
That basketball scene, though.
The basketball scene. It is another thing that's very, very campy. And at this point, I would consider an Elseworld story.
Okay.
It's very unique and I don't even think her name is Selena Kyle.
Okay.
Do you need to see it? No. Should you? Yes.
Okay, fair.
1000% you should see it for the plot.
Okay.
There's also Eartha Kitt. She played Catwoman.
Yes, obviously I know the 60s, Eartha Kitt and Julie Newmar, Lee Merriweather, who played her in the
one movie, the one
movie
in between the seasons.
Yeah.
I loved Batman when I was a kid, like on TBS, starting on the 5 after every. Do you remember that when every show started at like 105, 135?
On TBS.
On TBS, every show started like 5 minutes after.
Really?
I don't know why.
I don't remember.
It.
I'm a child of Toonami and Warner Brother WB in the morning.
Okay.
Saturday morning cartoons.
See, I never had WB. We didn't have cable. We didn't have WB in our cable package, so I missed a lot of that.
I thought that was standard. It was Channel 11.
Should have been, but it wasn't
regionally.
where I was from.
Really?
Yeah, I think regionally different pockets.
Yeah.
Oh, it came standard with your TV.
Yeah.
Like it was our like standard, but
Right, yeah.
they would have shows, and then they had like a semblance of the CW verse with Warner Brothers. They tried to build it.
Right.
They had Smallville and stuff like that where Supergirl is in.
Right, yeah.
And then the CW verse, which that did end up, CW became, I think, a cable channel.
Yeah.
But CW has so much women representation and it's all good.
Okay.
There's Batwoman. There's a Batwoman show and there's 2 Batwomen
Is that
in there.
Batgirl and Batwoman? They're not the same.
So Batwoman was played by Ruby Rose, and the character's name was Kit Kane.
Okay.
And then she was replaced by Javicia Leslie, who played Ryan Wilder.
And it is confusing because Batwoman is Kate Kane, but there's a Batgirl that goes by Cassandra Kane. So there's technically a Kathy Kane and a Cassie Kane that are different characters. Batgirl, I love because she's a ninja that actually hides her whole face. So she even has her like cowl covered, and it's a very different, more aggressive character. And Batwoman is traditionally, I mean, she's aggressive too, but a different type of character.
They also had Legends of Tomorrow, which the Black Canary kind of led that.
Okay.
It's so much fun. It's a like time travel type show. Really, really good. Supergirl has her own show.
I didn't know that.
And I love the Supergirl show.
I had a friend who was on that who played her mother.
Who played her mother.
Yeah, Laura Benetti in the first season. Yeah.
Fanciest guy I know. Fanciest guy I know. But yeah, the CW verse for sure just represents women in ways that's incredible. I absolutely loved it. So let's finish it out. Actually, someone threaded to me, where are the comic recommendations? And I said, our comic correspondent, Coy Jondrol, gives us one So keep it quick. Let's get some women. And let's just get the name
and a couple credits, but I'll keep it brief.
Keep it as brief as you can.
I do want to acknowledge One Bad Day right behind you. I love playing with the set what we have. 2 of these comics are actually in that compendium of books over there. One Bad Day is my favorite anthology series of all time. It's Batman villains as if they have their own individualized story that has no canon continuity whatsoever.
Okay.
So you could just read any of those and get the story in their entirety. And 2 of my favorite female writers actually wrote some of my favorite Bat stories ever, including One Bad Day Two-Face, which is written by Mariko Tamaki. And I love her Supergirl graphic novel being super. She did Harley Quinn, Breaking Glass, and Mariko Tamaki has a really great ability to kind of summarize everything that makes a character like complete in an individual story. So I think she's an absolute genius. I really want to give some love to Zatanna as a character. She's a magician. She's an absolute badass. And Mariko wrote a book called Zatanna, Bring Down the House, which is kind of her origin story retold. I also want to give some love to Kelly Thompson. Kelly Thompson did the absolute Wonder Woman we talked about. Kelly Thompson's an absolute genius. She also wrote some of my favorite Birds of Prey. And then there's G. Willow Wilson, who wrote One Bad Day Catwoman, and her Poison Ivy, still ongoing, is one of my favorite titles of all time. And I want to give some love to Bilquis Evely, who illustrated the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic. Some love to Kami Garcia, who writes amazing young adult fiction. She writes all the Titans as individual books, and then they come together, so it's like this big epic soap opera. Kami Garcia is amazing. Nicola Scott, who illustrated started Wonder Woman, very iconic imagery for me. One of my favorite illustrators of all time, Joelle Jones. She is my Catwoman illustrator. We didn't give love to Zoe Kravitz. Want to bring that back as well. And finally, I want to give some love to Kathy Ann, who directed Birds of Prey, as well as Patty Jenkins herself for Wonder Woman. So a lot of incredible women who have shaped so many characters I know and love. And I stumbled over some words because I'm so excited.
I love it.
Comics.
You know how like trumpet players can breathe in their nose and breathe out? That is Coy. He's like, I'm going to get it all in there. She gave me a time.
I'm like, wait, I get to talk about comics? Let me give you 80 recommendations.
We have a extremely important guest today.
Yes.
Lauren LeFranc.
Lauren LeFranc, we're excited to have her.
I told her I'd die for her. Hopefully she doesn't remember.
We'll remind her.
We'll remind her, but let's bring her out. I don't know if you remember, we met and I said I would die for you.
I don't remember you saying you would die for me.
Good, because it was a party.
So glad I showed up today because that's like, wow.
And I also want to add to it that I would kill for you.
No, don't hurt anybody for me.
What?
Don't hurt
I thought you'd be down. Coy said that you were going to throw a knife in the middle and make us fight for your attention.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's like so aggressive. And
Well, we're
actually
big
a
fans.
pretty nice person, I think. I didn't bring knives with me. Yeah. Emotionally full of daggers and stuff.
There
but
you
like
go.
pretty.
Well, welcome to the
Thanks.
welcome
thanks
to
for
our
joining.
podcast.
Thank you for having me.
To kind of start off for kind of non-TV industry people, what's the job of a showrunner exactly?
Well, it's an evolving job, I guess. Predominantly I'm a writer, so I'm the head writer of the Penguin. And then, it starts where I am sort of managing other writers. I hire other writers. We work together in a writer's room. I have final pass on all the scripts. And then it evolves into pre-production and I prep with all the different departments. We go into production. I'm on set a lot. I'm a producer as well. And always obviously with an eye towards the vision of the show. And I think a lot of what my job involves is just reiterating again and again to people what the vision is and like what we're striving for and what the tone is. I meet with every director, hire those directors, and tone them. So go through every single scene and every single script. And then I get the privilege to like work with all these amazing departments throughout. So even once we're finished shooting, I give notes to directors on set, work with our actors, and then get to be in editing and with visual effects and sound mixing and all the stuff. So I get to have my hands in all these different pots. But really, the coolest thing is I get to just be with all these other creative people who make everything we do that starts on the page better.
Now, you are the series creators for The Penguin.
Yeah.
What made you choose that character specifically? Do you have any relationship with DC Comics before you decided to take on this project?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up reading comic books. I say that I went to Comic-Con in San Diego before it was cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it was just like for nerdy kids and adults. But I was a kid and took a weird picture with a guy in a Spider-Man suit. And in retrospect, wondering if I should have done that at like 11 years old, but I did. He seemed fine. He was nice, I think. You never know what's behind the mask. This is the tricky thing.
That's the point, right?
Yeah. It's a mystery. But HBO and Max called me asking if I had a take because this was based on, of course, Matt's version of the Penguin in the Batman film. And this was when Matt was still editing the movie, so it hadn't come out. So I got to read the script, got a sense of who Oz was. He's very minimally in the movie, but I loved the idea that he was a gangster, and it was going to be very, very grounded. And that was really intriguing and interesting to me. And then just kind of took that and got to talk to Matt and see where his head was at, and then tried to put my own stamp on the character. But I mean, I grew up with Tim Burton's, Batman Returns is probably like the most seminal Penguin to me of Danny DeVito's depiction, which was amazing and so fantastical and awesome, and so emotional too. But obviously a little over the top and very tonally different than what we were trying to achieve on our show.
This is not your first comic to TV show adaptation, really. I mean, what is kind of the exciting part of taking or finding a story in like a wealth of stories. I mean, there's so many, as I'm learning as the DC curious. There's just so much in these universes. Like, how did you pinpoint maybe characteristics that you wanted to kind of come out in Oz in the show?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think for me, I wanted to study what Matt did. And this is, again, I had the script to look at. I didn't have the film yet when I was first brought on to start brainstorming. So I really dug into his script and tried to imagine the world. And then eventually he let me see the first 40 minutes of the movie when he was still editing it. And that was really helpful because visually it's such a stunning, beautiful film.
Yeah.
And that really helped set the tone for me. And then really it's, as a fan of this genre, there's always things you feel, right, where you're like, if only this or that, or like, I loved this so much. I wish I had more characters like this. So there is always a personal quality to what you're bringing as a writer, I think, to what you're hoping for. But also just wanting to honor the comics and honor the tone of what Matt was achieving in his film. And so I think where Matt and I really connected instantly was our desire for character forward stories and just really going there emotionally. And so once I understood that I had a great partner in Matt in terms of like how much he cared about characters and not just spectacle, then he was like, I want this to be, a character study. I really would love it to be psychological. And I'm like, oh, you're speaking my language.
Right, yeah.
Let's go. And then I just dug in and started to unpack for myself who I think this man is and why he is the way he is and what he desires and what he wants and what he fears and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, speaking of psychological, you got to talk about Sofia. I see Coy he's like
chomping at the
she
bit.
Said the magic words. We have to talk about Sofia, who is a character. Tyler, you don't know this.
She was new to me completely.
She's pretty. She's relatively, I think, new. She's not in as many things as other characters like Catwoman. What made you choose Sofia as a character and as? Coy, would you call her an antagonist?
I would say she is only an antagonist to those that wrong her. I
love it.
I think of
her story.
But if you think about the Falcones and the Long Halloween, and you think about the way they're like a supporting network, like the foundation of Gotham, it's not as messy until Batman gets in the way. So I personally see it as she's a powder keg waiting to go off, and episode 4 felt like that to me. So I would actually love to know, how did you balance that protagonist-antagonist relationship with such a performance from Colin Farrell that we'd had for those 3 episodes, and then this curveball in episode 4 where we suddenly get almost a new lead to the show for a time? How did you go through the process of, was it an edit? Was it an audience participation? Did you QC this with people? How did you balance the I love Oz, I hate Oz, I love Oz, especially with such a big character like Sofia?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I was always conscious of. I think when I was first talking to Matt about the show, one thing I brought up is I'm like, for me to come on and do this, I don't want to depict Oz in such a way that feels like we're making excuses for him. I'm like, if he's a villain, if he's a bad man, we need to show that through and through. That has to be a part of him. And so it gets tricky because like some stuff where it's like anti-hero, I know everyone has sort of a different interpretation of like what that really equates to. But for me, I think it was just making sure we're showing him as a complicated human being who has, many dimensions and is very flawed and very problematic, but also you can empathize with him. And I think the same with Sofia. And so I think when you're leading with empathy, when you're in terms of like creating a character and when you're writing a character, if you're leading with that, then they feel very human and you can more deeply understand them and know that like it never gets too arch, ideally. Like it feels like this is how some people can be. Obviously, we're living in a slightly elevated world, but it's so important to try to showcase the different sides of a person, of which we all have so many different sides of ourselves. So, with Sofia in episode 4, that in my first early pitch, I always knew I wanted a Sofia episode. And I always kind of tagged it in episode 4 because it felt like I would have 3 episodes to kind of demonstrate who Oz is and get you into the world of this version of Gotham, following him in the streets, and then you can kind of flip it on your head. And it also lets the audience think they know Sofia until they realize that she's much more complicated than they might have imagined.
So I do an evaluation and I answer a few questions to prove I'm sane, right? And that's it, right? Then what?
I'm afraid it's not that simple. The judge agreed to the ADA's request. You're being remanded to Arkham State Hospital for observation.
No. No, that doesn't make any sense.
You'll be under their care till the start of trial.
When is that?
6 months from now.
Oh my God, no, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. Can't you stop this? You're my fucking lawyer.
I'm sorry.
For me, it was so essential and important to give Sofia that because Oz is not a good man. And I knew the one thing I was told by Matt so firmly is by the end, he has to achieve a level of power. Oz is going to win in some way. So it was really important for me to make sure that he emotionally didn't win. You know, if he has to actually rise to power and achieve that, it has to come at a cost to him. And then also to make sure that we need to empathize with someone else for us to feel like we don't want him to win, or we have mixed feelings about that. And so I wanted people to empathize more with Sofia, not to think she's a hero per se, but to start to realize like, oh, I started the show seeing things through Oz's lens, and now I see things through Sofia's lens, and now I look at Oz a little differently. Oh, interesting. And that was my hope, at least. So
you have this very interesting way of framing the women, particularly Sofia, and what I like to call the LeFranc test, which is separate from the Bechdel test, because every time that Sofia has a scene with another woman, with Eve or with Frances, her name is Frances too, you know, the conversation is around Oz, but they leave with power. And I think that's why a lot of people endeared to Sofia specifically. Did you anticipate people taking in Sofia in that light and just making her a fan favorite?
I mean, I hoped for it.
Yeah.
And thank you for saying that. It's interesting because that Sofia Eve scene, I was like, man, we're not passing that Bechdel test because they're just talking about this guy a lot. Yeah. But did try to make sure that even though they were talking about a man, that it didn't, that's not what you were left feeling.
Yeah.
You were left feeling that you learn more about these two women and how complicated they are. I mean, I loved Sofia. I wrote her because I wished for a complicated female character like that. I think there's more room for so many. And, you know, I've said this before, but I grew up reading comics, and I would always sit in the back of my mom's Volvo and imagine stories and put myself in those stories. And I imagined myself as a male character because I thought those guys were kind of more interesting than a lot of the women. So I wanted to kind of give my younger self someone who would be very flawed and very complicated. Not that you like aspire to, but that you think about. Yeah. And myself as like an adult woman and other women out there and men, you know, I'm like, because I think there's that thing, right, where I've loved so many characters that are men, and of course I have, because they're just interesting people. And it's like, well, let's just make an interesting person. Her name is Sofia Falcone Gigante. And let's see if people will respond to that. And the greatest thing is that I think men and women have really dug into her and appreciated her in the way that I hoped they would. So it's been really lovely to see that.
Yeah.
I have to call out Kristen Milioti's performance too, because it's off the charts. I mean, I think we all know Colin Farrell. He's a very famous actor. I've seen Kristen in many things, but we'd already seen him play Oz before. So we kind of knew he had that ability. Kristen feels like just a revelation in this role. I mean, was there a moment where you realized what you had watching her perform as you're putting the show together?
Yeah. I mean, I love Kristen. She's so good. I'm so excited that people are recognizing her in this way. She has that rare ability, I think. One, she has so much gravitas, but also she can do comedy and drama. And that's what I was really looking for, because I knew I wanted Sofia to have a dark sense of humor and to like go there emotionally. And Kristen's just so tremendous. I mean, she started in theater, and there's so much of that she brings that I think a lot of people just weren't given the opportunity to see her take on characters that are so complicated in that way. I'm really so impressed and so grateful for what she's brought, because Sofia is alive and so vibrant and visceral because of her. But I remember we did a screen test with her and Colin, and it was a very awkward, silly situation. We were in a small conference room on the Warner Brothers lot, and I was like in a closet with Dylan Clark, one of our non-writing producers, at our little mini village, like with cans, watching her. And it was the lunch scene that she was auditioning with in the first episode, and then she also did the torture scene at the end of the first episode. But hearing the words and hearing her take on them and what she did with them, I got so excited. I was just like, oh, okay, this is going to work. Like, this is going to be great. But then also through set and, our costume designer, Helen Wong, like transformed her, and Brian Badi, our hairstylist, it was all so specific, and we were all together as a creative unit, and Kristen was so involved in this, making sure that we were really evolving Sofia in the way that we wanted, where she's really constricted in the beginning and then she lets loose. But there's been many times on set where I'm with all of our actors, truthfully, and certainly with Kristen, where I'm just watching, from Video Village being like, oh, damn, this is going to be great. So yeah, it's been really thrilling, and she's the loveliest person. So I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up her speaking in that scene, because Coy and I always gush about the way that you expanded on not just Matt Reeves' universe, but Gotham. And I think a big way you do that is through the accents with Sofia, even with Vic, who I actually met Renzi and we joked about him having like a Dominican Gotham accent.
Yeah.
And it's just so refreshing to see Gotham as a character as well.
Well, that's, credit to Jessica Drake, who is Colin's dialect coach. Mm-hmm. So Colin and Jessica came up with Oz's accent for the movie, which was it's so interesting. It's like a mix of so many different little accents, because you didn't want it to be just New York or anything like just New Jersey, but it has touches of them. And then they went into the history of some of these boroughs back in the day and kind of created Oz's accent. And Oz's accent is big. Yeah. You're like, oof. That was something we talked about a lot. We're like, this could go horribly wrong, and then Dee Dee O'Connell, who plays Frances, who's just an incredible actor. She's the best. She had the burden of having to take on Oz's accent because he got it from his mother.
Right.
So that was, I know everyone was so stressed of this could be ridiculous, these two people in a room talking like that. But that's all Jessica, who had melded that together. And then with Kristen, we knew she comes from a higher class neighborhood, more equivalent of a Long Island accent, but not quite. And so that was very specific, what Kristen did. And with all of our characters, obviously, then Renzi had, a stuttering coach and a dialect coach in that regard. Everything was so specific. And so what's so great is I think our Gotham City, thank you for saying that, about it. It feels so organic and real because of all the people behind the scenes and all the little details that people just maybe don't think about, of how meticulous everybody was. So that's all the accents on the show, really a credit to Jessica and the work she did.
I wanted to ask about Gotham in particular. We talked about Long Halloween. We talked about the very underrated Pain and Prejudice, the Penguin story there. And those have Gotham as a character. And this is one of the first times in all of Batman where I feel like it's as important a character as any other character. And I've always felt that way in the comic books and the animated series. This feels like a live action Gotham that feels real and lived in. And that scene of the crashing of the water, to me, especially paired with the Batman, allows an impact for the lower class of Gotham that I feel like we don't get to see a lot because we're so aware of the upper class and the Bruce Wayne side of things. What did you do to develop Gotham as a character? And were there comic references you looked at in wanting to make sure there was certain iconography, certain imagery, tying it to Matt's? This feels like such a beautiful tableau. How did you develop Gotham as a character?
Yeah, I feel like I could tell how long it would take to drive from Oz's house to Sofia to the mom. You did a great job there.
Oh, thanks. No, again, a tribute to everybody who worked on, our production designer, Kalina Ivanov, and Johnny Hahn, our visual effects supervisor, because all those little touches really help. And you got to see Gotham in the daytime. So that was really helpful. And knowing that and knowing sort of not the fears of that necessarily, but we were conscious of the fact that most of the time you see Gotham at night. And so what does Gotham look like in the day? And we called it our daytime noir. But it made you more focused on what the neighborhoods really are. It made you understand them a little bit better too, because you can see them. And so even little touches of, with music, I wanted to make sure that if a car drove by in a certain neighborhood, there's a different kind of music that's coming in. So you're just getting an environment that feels like a city, like a real place. And with Victor, with the flood, I was like, again, as a fan, I'm like, we never get to see a borough of Gotham. And also in the comic books, they tend to show poor neighborhoods as bad, or that like bad people exist there. And there's just some of those old school comic book tropes that are kind of terrible that we are now evolving away from. And so it's like, let's show really good, loving, working class people live in a place like Crown Point. That's so important to show that, because to me, I think that was really seminal in showcasing Gotham City and having it feel like a real place. Because that's the thing when you're reading a comic book, you're like, this is so extreme, this version of Gotham City. This doesn't feel that organic or real. So if you can relate it to the way we all live and how we interact with each other and see the trains and see how people travel and see how long it takes to drive somewhere and going over the bridge and who gets access to across the bridge, where do the trains stop? Where do they not let you go to? Like all that kind of stuff.
Well, I want to wrap this up nerding out now that we've got all the serious things. And before we get into theories or anything like that, we have to ask, did you have to kill Vic? We have to ask for everyone. Everyone needs to know that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that doesn't mean I enjoyed it. It was terrible. That was always part of my first initial pitch when I pitched all the emotional arcs of our characters, is that Vic would die, and he would die by Oz's hand. Yeah. And I think what became firmer as we were breaking story is that he has to die not because Oz needs to do that, not because Victor did anything wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's really a way to showcase Victor's journey through this, of where he evolves, but Oz, and like how distorted Oz is, how delusional he is. And it's meant to break your heart. So I have a lot of people come up to me and be like, why did you do that?
Why did you
do
it?
And I'm like, first of all, Oz did it. Okay. Like, it's not really my fault. I know.
You're everyone.
But it's easier if I'm like, look at that guy. He's terrible. Yeah. But it is to show you who Oz deeply really is. And it should be painful. I think, obviously there's certain deaths that happen in the show early on that you're like, yeah, that guy deserved it. And that's intentional too. Like, who are you rooting for? Like, we would always be talking in the writer's room. Are we with Oz in this moment? Or who are we with? Whose perspective are we seeing this from? And so at the end, we've been with Victor. We love Victor as an audience. He does not deserve that. And suddenly I think the audience is meant to, or the hope was, that we turn on him and we're appalled by him and we're shocked. And Oz breaks our heart because of what he chooses to do to Victor. So that's the intention. So that's why he had to die. But I am sad about it. I am deeply
no
sad.
matter who you were rooting for, it was always Vic. So it was like Vic and Sofia, or Vic and Oz, but never. Yeah. And it's I think that it's incredible that people associate that with you and not Colin. Because even when I'm on like
I'm sure Colin
boards,
gets it. He must.
You think he gets it as much as you?
I don't know. See Colin out in the wild, you're not thinking
you killed Vic.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. Because we can't see him. But
right,
we know you. You always look like Lauren LeFranc.
That's true. This is a really messed up thing I'm realizing. So, yeah, thanks,
we know.
I think that dark humor he'd appreciate, though. I feel like the Irish humor of this show is amazing because it is so dark and depraved. And I'm wondering, is there anything that didn't make the cut that you thought was funny that the audience or a studio exec was like, maybe not funny in that way?
I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind. I mean, our, HBO was super supportive of this dark, twisted show we made and the dark, humor that we have in it. I don't think so. I mean, really, we went there. We tried to, at least. So
there's a moment in, I think, the final episode where Sofia's begging him to tell his mom the truth, and he continues to lie. I don't know if that's a joke, but that was the funniest scene to me when she's like, what are you doing? Please, right. But I loved it. I think your humor, the writers, the team you picked, everything just worked in the show. And we're so glad that you blessed us with it, honestly.
thank you. That's
and
very nice.
and that you blessed the podcast as well.
Yeah,
I didn't
thank you
know
for
I could
coming on.
bless a podcast.
You blessed the podcast.
I'm glad I didn't bring knives then for sure.
I think it would have upped the stakes.
Probably, yeah.
They
Yeah,
have
I would have been more
gotten
nervous.
rid of
Okay, well,
So
next time.
next time we can have the
Yeah,
knives.
yeah.
But thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us today.
No, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Well, Lauren ended up being so much fun.
Yeah, that was a great
Everything
interview.
I hopeful.
Yeah.
It was a great interview. Well, we have a little bit of time. I wanted to take a moment and spotlight something, a comic book, a TV show. I'll start with the show because I love TV.
Mm-hmm.
And in the love of Lauren and all that she graced us with today, I say watch Penguin. The women in that, because it's Women's History Month.
Yeah.
The women in that show are written so beautifully. The fashion is insane. It's funny, it's dark, it's twisted, it's heartbreaking. You got to do it for Women's History Month.
Yeah.
Also, the finale had a bunch of women writing it, directing it. It's revolutionary, honestly. What about you? What's your spotlight?
A movie I loved from last year that I've been thinking about since I've watched it, I think at least 3 times now. I saw The TV Glow, which is currently on Max. I was not a comic book kid, but I love TV, especially in the 90s, like Snick, like Are You Afraid of the Dark type of stuff. Like that's what I connected with friends over.
Yeah.
And I feel like that movie just like put me back in that time period and like brought up all those feelings about sharing something that you love with someone else, you know? How about you, Coy?
I'd recommend Kneecap. I don't know if anybody's seen Kneecap.
yeah.
That is a movie I love and hold near and dear. It is a beautiful underdog story. It's the importance of culture and language. And one of my favorite parts of that interview is her saying how we see lower income people in a certain light. And I think that's really important. And it does loosely tie into this film. And I really love people's story getting told that don't usually get told. And it's about the Irish language being recognized as the language of Ireland, which only happened in 2022. And thanks largely to a hip hop group. And if that sounds crazy, watch the movie.
Yeah, that was actually the Irish submission to the Oscars last year.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
What was the hip hop group?
There's a hip hop group named Kneecap, and it's 3 guys, and no joke, one of them is actually a school teacher, and then 2 guys on the wrong side of the tracks trying to get by, and they literally rap in Irish, and they got so much attention that the Irish as a country started to recognize Irish as a language through this hip hop group. So imagine like Straight Outta Compton meets Beastie Boys in Ireland, and it's based on a true story. Wow. And it just happened. Like this is ongoing. They're playing Coachella this year.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they act as themselves. They play themselves, and they keep up with Michael Fassbender.
I love that. And that's honestly what rap was meant to do.
There you go.
Change lives and bring awareness. That being said, that's all we have for today. Thank you all for joining us at DC Studio Showcase, the official podcast presented by Max. You can catch new episodes every other Friday. You can watch them on Max's YouTube, or you can also watch us on Spotify. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I didn't know.
And you can listen to us anywhere podcasts are available. It's the most accessible podcast out there.
And if you want to check out the comics we recommended and even more, check out DC Universe Infinite app. It is DC's comic subscription service, or you can support your local comic shop. Either way, get to reading some comics.
And then as always, if you have an idea for the show, if you have any comments you want to make, be sure to comment on our YouTube page. We read it and we look and we take it in.
Yeah.
Or you can hit us all directly. I'm on all platforms at Fantastic Frankey, Frankey.
I'm at Coy Jandro on YouTube, Instagram, and far too often on Twitter for now.
And I am at Tyler Coates, mostly on Instagram, Blue Sky. I'm there. And if you've made it this far, I think you like the show.
Yes.
And we would love it if you share that love. Give us some reviews. Give us some good ratings. Be nice.
I'm nerd commentator Frankey Smith.
I'm entertainment journalist Tyler Coates.
And I'm comic correspondent Coy Jandro.
And this is DC Studio Showcase. We'll see you next time.
This was an OBB sound production for Max and DC Studios, hosted by Frankey Smith, Tyler Coates, with comic correspondent Coy Jandro. Executive producers for DC Studios, Phil Soponides and Gary Barbosa. Executive producers for DC are Mike Pilata and Victor Diaz. The executive producer for Max is Becky Rowe, and producers for Max are Savon Slater and Margaret Kelly. The executive producers for OBB are Michael Ratner, Scott Ratner, Arlen Konopacki, and Toby Lawless. Research producer Sam Harrison, production manager Kevin Lynn, and the studio coordinator Elijah Matias. The director of photography Heath Gresham, the first assistant camera Chris Piper, the camera operator Ben Cohen. Gaffer, Arthur Garcia. Key Grip, Sam Satoski. Key Grip, Alessandro Picasso. Production designer, Francesca Maldonado. Set director, Oscar Huezo. Lead man, Camilo Castano. Sound mixer and editor, Josh Falcon. On-set mixer, Darren Bowling. Composer, Ethan Walter of The Ringers. Post-production supervisor, Mariana Crisostamo. Editor, Jesse Holland. Assistant editor, Mark Alcacid. Hair and makeup artist, Kendall Shannon. Our associate director of social for OBB, Lenore Castro. Senior coordinator social for OBB, Sharif Bukhari. Host coaching, John Luce. Talent booker, Tess Bartholomew. Production assistant, Terry Kraft. Antonio Cavallo.